I'm very interested in what's going on in the world, like more or less like every average journalist, I would say. So at a certain moment, I think when I was sort of halfway my graphic design career, I always felt like, is graphic design the right tool for me? It was good that we worked at the time for all these NGOs because that sort of made me connected to what was going on in the rest of the world. But I'm seriously very interested in telling these stories. And graphic design is not necessarily the ideal tool of doing that. But photography is, and I think it was a sort of observation I had that most photojournalistic books at the time were not that interesting. So I thought that can be done, in a different way. I mean, these photographs are amazing, but it's almost as if they not make full use of the object, and that's how I started to collaborate with photographers. And my inspiration is to make an object that ideally coincides with the photographic story. So let's say if graphic design is all about typography and color and choice of paper. But for me, it's not so interesting if it's simply a beautiful package or beautiful wrapped around a story. It should coincide with the story. Whenever there's a change of paper, it should feel natural. It should be exactly at the moment where the story also changes. Or it's that kind of combination of things that I absolutely like. It's close to 20 years ago that I designed my first photography book, which is the World Press Photo annual book. And that was the first time that I was in an editorial team, preparing a book. And in that editorial session, I understood that there's no way of designing a photo book if you don't understand photography. So my tools are graphic design, but if somebody wants to do this, he or she absolutely needs to understand the medium, understand photography. You need to be able to look with the same eye as a photographer does. You need to understand what's going on in the world. You need to understand all that. What I'm excited about is that this physical object represents another form of visual storytelling than what happens in the virtual world. I think nowadays, especially since photography became digital, it's the ideal language for the virtual world we're mostly living in. But this virtual world is also like very, very fast, and it's like massive. I mean, there are billions of pictures that are targeted to you every day. So it's very difficult to find a spot in this virtual world where you can actually find a quiet story. And I feel that let's say, sort of the success of the contemporary photography book today has everything to do with being the opposite of this virtual world. Don't get me wrong, I love the virtual world. I mean, it's ideal that with one click we can have access to any knowledge, and also visual knowledge. It's wonderful. But if you really want something to take on in your own pace, or that has a real beginning and a middle and an end, something that you can contemplate on, then that is something I think the photography book, the contemporary photography book, fulfills perfectly.